Hello,
Hey,
Internet. We are back. It's Friday, May 14th, 2021. I just gave the date like a principal.
that was good.
And
No,
I
I
just-
didn't know the date until you said it, so yeah.
Not that it's important because you could be listening to this. I'm going to take a stab here, okay? I'm going to say April 8th, 2024. Okay?
Damn. You think the internet's still gonna be around
Oh, I
then?
do.
Yeah.
And if someone is listening to the show in that 2 year 11-month window, definitely
Definitely reach out.
just let me
I'm
know.
sure we'll still have the email, right? Startacult@gmail.com.
Oh,
We
yeah.
are starting a cult, by the way. That's Grant Up Jake.
That's true. That's what we do. I just want to see. I bet you someone will be listening to the show at that point.
That'd be cool. This specific episode, that'd be nice.
But we are back this week with something a little bit different. Instead of talking about things that are, I think I'm gonna try to make up a word here or use it incorrectly. Okay,
Perfect.
heretical, like having I would assume that the definition would be like having similar effects to heresy.
Heresy?
Heretical. You're a heretic, but I'm a heretical. If that's not a word already, I just made it up, and I'm gonna use that.
Yeah.
Instead of doing an episode where we talk about, maybe this happened and this is someone's story, we're going to talk about something that most certainly did happen and is studied even to this day because of pretty much being one of the most historical fuck-ups there's ever been.
Yeah, very much so. First time it ever happened.
Yeah, and that is just great. It is
fantastic.
It's great for everyone involved, but we are talking about Chernobyl.
The Chernobyl disaster.
Indeed, we are. Now, before we get in, I think there's two important things to note. Jake and myself, we are in no way scientists, okay? So bear with us.
No.
If there is something wrong with what we say about, certain things or even mispronouncing words that we're going to try to tackle here later in the episode,
Yeah.
don't make fun of us because we are not scientists.
Either correct us nicely or keep it to yourself, kid.
Yeah, exactly.
But we would like corrections.
Yeah, we definitely would.
Because, again, we're not scientists. We don't know what the fuck we're talking about. This is just what we've read.
Yeah, we like to learn. We do this show because we like to learn. That's
True.
That's what we're here doing.
We have a hunger for knowledge.
How'd you like that?
That was good.
Intro.
That was real sassy. I like that. But from what I understand, you have something you want to talk about before we get into Chernobyl itself, eh?
That I do, because I think it's important for us to understand not only historically how we have dealt with radiation, but that when we started actually harnessing the power of radiation, we kind of were reckless with it a little bit. You might not believe that, right? But I'm going to tell you a little story.
If you're getting some power, you're going to want to be reckless. If we came into like $1 million immediately,
yeah,
how much do you think that would be just gone within a week?
A good chunk.
A good chunk of it, and then we'd be like, wait a minute. So anyway, yeah, nuclear power, same deal.
I agree. Okay, so from 1917 to 1926, there was a company called the U.S. Radium Corporation. Okay? So the U.S. Radium Corporation, or it was originally titled the Radium Luminous Material Corporation, but that name didn't have much flash on it.
It's a bit on the nose, yeah.
Yeah, it did not have much flash. So what they did, and again, excuse me if this is a rudimentary explanation, but they, pretty much all they did was they extracted purified radium from carnotite ore, and by doing this, they were able to create luminous paint, or glow-in-the-dark paint, just very bright, glowing paint.
How fun. That sounds nice.
So they were able to make this. Now, this is where we're going to talk about the Radium Girls. I think you have an idea where this is going.
It sounds like a band.
So, no, they were female factory workers who contracted horrible radiation poisoning from using this illuminated paint from this company. This was not a isolated incident. It happened all around the country, and then there was one occurrence in Canada as well. So this happened in pockets of the world. And what we're dealing with here is these women were hired to paint. That's what they were doing.
You gotta paint.
They were
Sometimes
painting.
you gotta paint.
Now, admittedly, I'm in no way saying that this is their fault because I'm on the ladies' side on this one. But there are things I've read and resources that have stated, again, I don't know how true it is, that these women enjoyed the paint so much that they just would start having fun with it. In one instance, the woman painted her private parts to surprise her husband later that night, because then when she'd take her pants off, they would glow.
It's kind of fun. It's like a Burning Man sort of thing, like glow sticks. You know, that's kind of cool. In theory.
Another one said that they used to put it in their teeth, so when they'd smile at each other, it would be, glow in the dark teeth.
Holy shit!
But as we can figure out, the individual companies that these ladies worked for were definitely not telling them the truth. They said that the paints were completely harmless, and that it was just regular old paint. You can do whatever you want with it. I don't see an issue with you putting it in your
really
mouths.
took that do whatever you want with it to heart, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ.
So these women got really fucking sick.
I'd imagine, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't do that with normal paint. Like, what? What was the logic here?
I don't know. But in 1928, they began the process of suing. Okay, so they ended. Long story short, the Radium Girls ended up winning the case. It was a group of 5 women that led the case against this company, and that company is United States Radium Corporation. Again, not a flashy name.
Not a flashy name. Better than the old one, though.
But they did end up winning the suit, but only 2 of them had survived long enough to be there when the case was settled.
Sounds about right, yeah.
A lot of them, they struggled with similar symptoms that we'll talk about later. Things that happen in the mouth, gum and tooth damage.
Yep.
Horrible skin lesions. And all around, just painful death.
Yeah.
Absolute painful
Just not
death.
good stuff.
But yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about the radiation sickness later when we get to that.
Yeah, we'll definitely get there.
But the reason I bring this up is because it was very important in our understanding of how we interact with radiation, and that it can be useful, but it can also be extremely deadly.
It's terrible.
Now,
really.
obviously, this is pre the nuclear bomb and Chernobyl. So we're still in the early days of understanding what it was to do to us.
Yeah.
But the Radium Girls, bless their hearts for dying for the cause, they taught us all that radiation is not something to play around with.
Yeah, quite literally. Yeah, you don't put radioactive things in your teeth. Don't put it on your junk.
Yeah, don't do any of that.
Probably just stay away from it.
I would recommend that at all costs. Even as far, don't get an X-ray unless you really need it.
Dude, I learned while researching this that the people who first came up with the X-ray, pretty sure they toured it around the country, showing people how it worked, and so they were X-raying themselves 3-4 times a day.
Yeah,
they died super quickly. You can't do that too often. A couple X-rays in your lifetime is still not good, but sometimes you got to do it.
No, I it's funny because we must have looked at the same thing because I came across that also. I correct me if I'm wrong. I read that Thomas Edison created the X-ray machine. And it was his assistant that had suffered all of the damage because he wouldn't do it to himself. Because
he fucking knew how dangerous it was, or maybe suspected.
What I had read was that Thomas Edison and his assistant would X-ray his hand multiple times a day, and eventually his hand had to be amputated because it was so disfigured.
Holy shit!
and he almost lost his other hand, but they stopped previous to that happening because they were like, all right, maybe it is the X-ray.
Maybe it's the X-ray.
So if you needed another reason to dislike Thomas Edison, he almost killed his assistant in the name of X-ray technology.
Jesus Christ. Didn't he kill an elephant, too? He, electrocuted an elephant to,
I think so,
show
yeah.
that he could or something?
I learned it on Bob's Burgers, I think.
Me too, and I looked it up. I was like, that's real? Are you shitting me?
That's too funny. But yeah, so it's nothing to play around with. Now, obviously, nowadays, it's 2021 as we're doing this episode. We're much more aware of these things, and we're able to kind of...
At least a little bit, yeah. 35 years after Chernobyl, yeah.
We're sort of able, and I say sort of because we're never totally able to control and understand how these nuclear things work, but we're getting better, and we're using it for good and not evil at the moment. So that's...
At the moment.
That's a positive.
Yeah, that's just kind of what you gotta go for. It's just... it's here. May as well try to use it for good.
But yeah, it is. That's like the crux of what we're dealing with. Now, I don't know if we said this yet, but this will be a 2-part episode.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, because there's... Believe it or not, there's a lot of shit on Chernobyl. There's a ton of stuff to talk about. And we're just gonna get through the facts, what happened, all the the day of sorts of stuff.
We're gonna break this down for you. We're gonna tell you why you should never be around a nuclear reactor if you have an opportunity to not be around one.
Yeah, maybe go the other way.
And why, just why a lot of things is what you're going to be asking yourself.
We're going to be answering a lot of whys.
All right, so why don't we take this opportunity to dive right in?
Let's get right the fuck in there. All right, so the Chernobyl disaster was a nuclear mishap that took place near the Ukrainian SSR city of Pripyat. Pripyat.
We are from Ukraine, yes? Like Nico Bellic.
Holy shit. Dude, Ukraine it's such a cool name for some reason.
You come to Ukraine, yes?
Ukraine.
You come to Ukraine. I can't do a good Ukrainian accent, but I feel like I try and it makes me happy. You come to Ukraine.
It's a really fun accent to do. But anyway, it's a nuclear mishap that took place near the Ukrainian SSR city of Pripyat on Saturday, April 26th of 1986. All right, during which the reactor number 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded multiple times during a simulated power outage safety test, ultimately resulting in the worst nuclear disaster in recorded history to this day.
Okay, so let's take a timeout right here for a second and just...
I realized that was a very long sentence. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, not because of that. It's just because I just want to reiterate how ridiculous this is. That this happened during a test. This was
a safety test, yeah.
This was not meant to be some sort of jumping into the deep end type of situation. We're going to put yourself in the bad spot and you're going to get out of it. No, this was just a test, just to make sure that, everything could be done the way they thought it could be.
In the way it should be done, yeah.
And they got the answer to their question in the worst possible way you could get the answer. It's like asking the question, if I put a slab of baby back ribs on the grill for 35 hours, are they going to burn? And they did that, and then on hour 34, they were like, we ruined the barbecue.
Yeah, it's like, what has to happen for that to be good is the fucking grill can't be on.
Yeah,
which is what they were trying to do, is some sort of simulated shutdown, but you got to start there.
They burned the proverbial ribs that were...
And you can't burn ribs. Who the fuck is going to waste ribs?
Oh, ribs.
Very irresponsible people.
Ribs are so fucking good.
They're the ultimate meal.
I love a good rib. That has nothing to do with Chernobyl. But it's a good comparison because these guys, they overcook the ribs and they ruin the barbecue.
Don't overcook your ribs. But yeah, dude, it was fucking crazy. Until Japan's Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011, Chernobyl was the only nuclear disaster rated at a 7 on the International Nuclear Event Scale, which is the maximum severity is a 7.
Why a 7? I feel like every other scale is like 1 through 5 or 1 through 10. So to me, naturally, I'm like, if this is on a 5 scale, yeah, obviously it's really bad. It's a 7. Like, this is above the scale. But I would just assume, well, it's a 7, so the scale's out of 10. It's not as bad as it could be.
Well, this isn't like the Spinal Tap of like gauges. It's like, oh, we're gonna say this one went up to 11. Like, no,
That's what it
we
should
still
have been.
need to use the scale that they
This
made.
one's a 7. I'm thinking that's not that bad. At least it wasn't an 8, but then I find out there is no 8. It's only
There is
7.
no 8. It stops at 7. 7 is the worst. But anyway, see, until Japan's Fukushima thing, this was the first and only time that it ever got to a 7, any sort of nuclear disaster. So the total cost of the cleanup and safety measures taken afterward ended up being 18 billion Soviet rubles, which
18 billion rubles.
I've read that comes out to $68 billion in 2019, like U.S. dollars. But I actually went on and like put it into like an exchange rate, like inflation calculator, and it came out with a drastically different number.
Let's see. What was what's the number again?
It was 18 billion Soviet rubles.
Okay, 18. I'm looking this up for us.
All right.
You continue.
I have the number that I came up with on the inflation calculator that I used, and it is 243,253,734,864.88 in today's U.S. money.
All right, I think that's correct. I'm about to figure this out right now. The 18 billion is such a huge fucking number.
It is, and now it's like, oh, even dude, 18 billion in the rubles, 68 supposedly in 2019 dollars. But now, is inflation that bad? Because we're up to $243 billion.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Isn't it so much goddamn money? Anyway, this was a very expensive accident, all right? And it's fucking bonkers. So the total death toll, however, not just price, human lives matter too. The whole death toll from this historic disaster came out to be approximately 31 people.
Okay.
All right.
I mean,
and that was just due to the explosion itself, two people died in the initial explosion, and then people in the following weeks started dying from acute radiation sickness.
Yeah. See, I'd rather die in the
quick.
Explosion, and I think
very much so.
everyone in the world would agree with me. That's if you have to pick one, that's the way you want to go.
Definitely. However, the toll was later adjusted to 60 due to radiation-induced cancers. And there's still a lot of people suffering from long-term health problems due to the disaster, and that ultimately results in their death. But this number is estimated to be between 4,000 and 16,000.
Yeah, that's a number that I would. Because that always throws me off, especially when we started researching this. It was only 30 people, but then you start to read and understand what they're talking about. You're like, oh.
There's a lot of stuff that goes into this.
Oh, yeah, that didn't just kill everyone immediately.
Yeah. But you know what? We're getting ahead of ourselves already. So let's talk about how it happened. Let's talk about what
exactly
happened.
Who gummed up the works?
Who gummed it all up?
What happened here? Something happened that was bad news for everybody.
It's true. So, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant consisted of 4 Rbmk type nuclear reactors. All right. 2 of these reactors were installed in the 1970s. All right. And the other 2 were installed alongside them in 1983. Okay. So just a little lay of the land. Southeast of the plant, an artificial lake was put in for a convenient source of coolant for the reactors, right? And about 3 kilometers from there was the new city of Pripyat, housing 49,000 inhabitants. And the town of Chernobyl was about 15 kilometers east of the plant, housing 12,500 inhabitants.
So yeah, just put yourself in perspective. There is a large amount of people in a relatively small area around this nuclear reactor. In most instances, that wouldn't be an issue, but when something bad happens, then then you got problems because now the population's not 500; it's a couple 100,000 maybe.
Yeah, yeah. So these RBMK type reactors. These are Rbmks. Yeah. That type
really
of
big
reactor.
machine Ks.
K's. The last one is just the letter K's.
Yeah, I don't know what else it could be.
I don't know what the fuck it stands for, but this specific type of reactor is very pivotal to the story. So these particular reactors used enriched 235 uranium and 238 uranium. And apparently they're often mixed, like the two elements are mixed to kind of like counteract one another to make it more stable and, manageable.
Yeah, see, chemistry was never my strong suit, so even trying to research some of these things, I was like, oh no, I was getting like PTSD.
A lot of this is like, I guess I'll just write this down.
Yeah, no, it is.
You know what I mean?
It's hard, but
I don't know what the fuck.
There's a lot of moving parts into a nuclear reactor.
Very much so. It's probably why I don't work with them. But anyway, so there are these things. They're called moderators. All right? And they're used to slow down atoms, yet speed up reactions.
Okay.
Which seems very weird, right?
Yeah, seems
that's how it's done.
But yeah, I guess in the world of science, that just makes sense. If it seems wrong in science, it's correct.
Isn't that just infuriating? But and the moderator in the RBMK's case was graphite. So, like pencils. Isn't that what?
Yeah, graphite.
What's in pencils? Is graphite now?
They're like, a lead pencil. It's all graphite. None of it's lead. You'll die from lead.
Lead is far too bad for you. People are just eating their pencils. Water was used as a coolant, which both removes and creates steam, ultimately powering it.
Yeah, see, so in a perfect world, nuclear reactors are ideal because they're self-sustaining because the things that you have to do create heat. Heat creates heat. And then you cool that heat, creating steam, and that steam creates power to power the machine that starts it all up.
Yeah.
So everything kind of goes in motion, and
the coolant becomes the fucking power because of the power being put into the coolant.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, this is why the idea of nuclear reactors were able to take off, because they, in practice and in theory, they're very simple and they're very efficient, and their output is enormous. So it's like, as much energy as it would take to make that much power, nuclear reactors can do it in about half the amount. So
theoretically, it's a very good thing, except for when Chernobyl happens.
Yeah, theoretically. Yeah. We use that term very loosely because theoretically this is a good idea.
Yeah. Specifically, this type of reactor is pretty much one of the only problems with what happened here. Because the RBMK type reactor has been known to, like, even at this time, it was known to be like a cheaper and seemingly like a new, better way to get these
it's the dollar store nuclear reactor.
Basically, it's cheaper, and the Soviet Union had 16 of them. Yep. And there were 4 at this site, but it was the only kind of reactor that the Soviet Union had. So later on,
working.
They were working, but like as time goes on, you'll see why they probably didn't want to disclose as much information about how terrible this was. It's because like if they got rid of this kind of reactor, they would have no nuclear power anywhere in the country.
It reminds me of, I'm thinking of it as like a DJ, but this DJ set up all
Paris
of their
Hilton?
Equipment with just YouTube clips on like life hacks. So all their speakers are just like tubes of fucking paper towels that they cut a hole in. And like the party just sucks.
It's just their phone that they put into a large metal bowl to make it like a speaker system.
And like they're not gonna like announce over the fictional PA system like we made a mistake and we left our equipment at home. They're going to just try to keep the party going, and that's what Russia did.
I imagine they would make announcements through like a cup with a string on it attached to a huge like drum above their head.
They're like, hello, everyone. Can you
Is this working? I have to hold the string taut.
Everyone's like, I can't hear you. It's like, shut up back there.
Everyone be quiet. Everyone be quiet.
It's a real. It's not a flimsy operation. It's just a.
It's a cheaper, less safe operation.
I guess a good way of putting it into human perspective for day-to-day people, it'd be like getting a dog. Okay, so you buy a dog, but you bought a Rottweiler and you're putting it in a pen that's made for a Chihuahua. It's not gonna thrive.
It's like wearing a seatbelt made of red vines. It's like it. Sure,
they're dealing with something very dangerous, and they're doing it in a very cheap and flimsy way. And it's like, we're gonna do. It's fine. It'll work. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. So, let's get into the day. Okay, let's get into the goddamn
April 26th
of 1986. So this all occurred at 1:23 and 40 seconds in the morning. All right, that was the exact time that all this started to go down.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 0 a.m. And so a safety test was to be conducted that in past years, through multiple attempts on this very reactor type, the Rbmk, it had been attempted multiple times. This specific test, it had always produced negative results. It never worked. Never, this safety test. So the test was to see if, in the event of power being lost, that the reactors could continue functioning and cooling themselves, etc. And in an attempt to ensure success and safety, 3 diesel generators were also hooked up to the core as an extra cushion against disaster. One problem with these generators, though, that we'll find is that they each took about 60 seconds to get up and running.
Okay,
those are all very pivotal seconds.
Yeah, those are
in the situation for nuclear disaster.
59.9 extremely valuable seconds that could have saved lives.
It's like, oh, but we have 3 of them. It's like they're all going to take the same amount of time to start. Mm-hmm. It's not a quantity thing. But anyway, so the whole plan was to see if, in the event of a shutdown, that the still spinning yet slowing down turbines of the reactor could continue the process of producing the energy it needed to keep itself cool long enough for the diesel backup generators to fully become operational. Okay, so it was basically like, let's see if we can line all this shit up. We think we have it right this time after the 5th fucking time throughout all these many years. So that was the whole deal. And the test was set to take place at an earlier date. So it was like the day before. And it was to be ran by a very specific team of individuals during the afternoon shift. And they were all familiar with all this shit. They knew what they were doing. Everything was going to be all right. However, the test was postponed due to another nuclear plant in the country not producing enough power, like shutting down in a sense.
That's a bad intro.
Everyone's coming home from work, and they're all going to be watching TV, listening to radios, have all their lights on in their house. There's going to be more need for power in the afternoon.
Let's shut it down.
Yeah.
Let's shut it down.
They can't shut it down, Grant. They can't shut it down. So it was postponed. The test in Chernobyl was to take place that night, right? Like we said, 1:23 and 40 seconds a.m.
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's when it took place. That is like an oddly perfect time for it to happen.
Isn't it crazy?
It's too good. It'd be better. See, I'm a 12:34 type of person, just because I think it's
way more satisfying.
Yeah, but I mean, if for a situation you don't ever want this to happen. But if it's going to happen, you want it at a time like this.
Can you imagine if it happened at 12:34 and 56 seconds?
I would truly
I would almost
believe,
not question it. I'd be like, this had to happen. There was no...
I would truly believe that we are in some form of simulation and that
definitely
everything is done as a joke. And that was just it was like, we're going to delete this one. Boop. And it was like, we hit it at the right time.
Nuclear fire. Yeah. So yeah. The whole test on this reactor was postponed to the night shift, full of people that were not very familiar with the test or the equipment, at least as much as the people who were going to do it in the evening previous. But Before this delay occurred, the reactor was already being primed for the shutdown. So, by the time that the delay was officially enacted, the reactors were already set to produce significantly less power than on a normal day at the old nuclear power plant. Okay, they remained at this reduced power level for an additional roughly like 12 hours due to the delay, and this had a lot to do with what happened. So, the reactors ultimately didn't have enough time to cool off despite the extra time. And the Rbmk type reactors at this time, it was thought to be, like I said, the cheap, slicker way of doing stuff, nuclear energy wise. However, it pretty much from this disaster, it's known to be a trash reactor. And like I said, probably why the Soviet Union was not very keen on admitting to a lot of wrongdoing here, because that's all they had was RBMKs.
I mean, yeah, I kind of, as much as you want to blame them, it's hard. I mean, they made a mistake, a tragic mistake, but it's also like they're not going to come out and just be like, yeah, we really shouldn't have made that decision. We really fucked everyone up.
Yeah.
So I get it. It's not okay, but I get it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Russia would have very much preferred that they kept the right guys on the testing floor for the test.
Oh yeah, I mean,
they would have probably rather had that with the blackout for maybe a couple days than what actually happened.
Yeah,
I'm just venturing a guess.
I think your guess. I think it's a safe one.
Well, thank you. So, let's get into this. At the top, on top of the faulty equipment, there was a fair amount of personnel fault as well. Automatic shutdown mechanisms were disabled before the test was conducted, and by the time the shutdown was manually done, the reactor was violently unstable.
Violently, you say?
Violently unstable. This instability was due to a positive feedback loop of steam bubbles ultimately making the reactor more reactive as opposed to the decrease in reactivity that they were going for, resulting in a positive void coefficient.
Oh, yeah, your classic.
Yeah, everyone knows what that is, right?
Classic positive void.
Positive void coefficient.
Yeah, that. That happens all the time. Sure.
Don't you hate when that happens? You get a positive
have
void coefficient.
I have a rough idea of what all three of those words are separate from each other. But when used in one statement, it's a very
different thing you're dealing with.
That is a mouth burger. That's what that is. It's too much.
Yeah. So in keeping the time of the episodes in mind, you go ahead and look that up, you guys at home, because it's going to be way too long to explain that. But so yeah, it resulted in a positive void coefficient. For the test, the reactor should have been stabilized to about 1,000 megawatts. And at the time of the test, however, the reactor was at about 30 megawatts. And because of this, the positive void coefficient became dominant, causing panic in the personnel, who then started raising the power back to the normal between 700 and 1,000 megawatts. By disabling the automatic regulators and manually freeing the graphite-tipped boron control rods.
God, this shit is so
You see, it's so goddamn boring, but it's so exciting at the same time because you know what happened afterward.
We're kind of explaining.
It's people like us, which is why this happened. We're just like, yeah, the boron tipped.
Boron levels
we got
low
the
or too high or
graphite-tipped
something.
boron pencils, rods. We need more megawatts. Like, I don't know what I'm saying.
Sir, you are not qualified for this position. It's like, I know.
I know, man.
Get me out of here. You're paying me too much money for me to not know what this is.
And so the control rods, they had the, what was it I said earlier? It was fucking the moderators. The moderators were graphite and boron. And like I said earlier, they slow down the atoms, but they speed up the reactions, so it's all like contained and all that. Great. That's fine. It's said that 30 control rods are needed to successfully do this, like bring the reactor to a safe shutdown. However, they only had 8. That's not enough. 8 is not 30.
That's nowhere near the right amount.
That's roughly 22 less than you need. So there is an increase in coolant flow, right? Resulting in a drop of steam pressure.
That's not good.
Which would have set off an automatic shutdown. However, this feature was circumvented, forcing the personnel to have entirely... they were completely under control of this, but it was all manual, so they had to do it all themselves. The control of the still functioning reactor. And then they removed the remaining control rods. They just took them all out.
Like, get them out of here. We don't need these.
They're just like,
control
maybe we
rods.
don't need these.
Fuck these. We don't want them. Get them out of here. Get the boron in here.
Yeah. So, the reactor is now massively unstable. They probably shouldn't have done any of the stuff that they did. And the operators were making adjustments every few seconds. So basically, they're like keeping this thing from exploding based on like feel for the dials.
So it's like, all right, this one,
it's just complete
degrees.
Jazz music of nuclear science.
We're just gonna turn this knob. Yep, that's it. That feels like the right.
This feels like it's fine. Yeah. So it was massively unstable. They're making adjustments every couple seconds. And at the same time, coolant flow was reduced, ultimately producing more steam. So now steam pressure, which resulted in a power surge of roughly 100 times the normal power output, just happened. We don't know why they got the coolant flow down. People think it may be because they wanted to get the power level back up. But ultimately, we don't know why they made that decision.
Yeah, that is a good point, because it's like they're... In a way, they could have tried to get the power to go up, therefore bringing the cooling property down. But I guess, in hindsight, what's more important? Cooling off the reactor or increasing the power? I don't know.
I have no fucking clue, but they picked the wrong one.
I would assume...
They did.
In a situation where you're having potential meltdown issues... You might be more focused on the cooling aspect of the operation than the actual power presentation of the operation, if that makes sense.
Hey man, you got to get that raise. You gotta pull through for the company.
I guess you do.
You have to persevere.
You got to save the day. Everyone's a hero.
You have to save the day until Chernobyl happens. All right, what do we got here? Huge power surge, about 100 times the normal output of power. This all resulted in a steam explosion. So that's something that I learned. I was surprised by that. I didn't know that it was just steam that caused the explosion. I thought it was some crazy chemical thing, which in a sense it was, but it's like, it was just steam and pressure.
It's like that Peter Gabriel song, Steam.
It's exactly like that.
I don't know what it's about, but I know it's a weird song.
It's about steam, man. It's about steam. But, yeah, so a steam explosion. It destroyed the reactor's core. Reactor number 4 specifically. That was the core that exploded. And it was followed by a second explosion mere seconds later.
That's never a good thing.
Isn't it crazy?
When one explosion is immediately followed by another one, that's a big issue.
Something's wrong.
That's a big issue.
Something's very wrong here. It's not known 100% what caused the second explosion. However, it is theorized that it was due to hydrogen and oxygen interacting with the elements in the initial explosion. I don't know. I don't know a lot of this.
I guess yeah. I mean, I guess
it's as good a guess as any.
If a nuclear reactor is about to explode, I bet you there's a couple things that could explode inside of it,
Yeah,
so I'm not going to take a stab at which one I think it was, but I guess it makes sense that something would have exploded.
Yeah, there's going to be some explosions. So 2 workers died in the initial explosion. One immediately, the other one later on in the hospital just due to complications. I mean, he was in an explosion. So, about 300 tons of graphite that was ejected into the air from the explosion, starting multiple fires, resulting in a majority of the main release of radioactivity into the surrounding environment.
Okay.
So this thing is blown.
So now
all these things are just gone, and there's just radioactive fire.
Yeah, now we have real bad news. Just really bad.
Very bad.
Not only was there an explosion that is going to take a massive hit on the economy just for the sheer size and price of what it is, but the things inside of it are now leaking out, and they will kill you if you get close.
Very much so, and they were very concerned about this. In fact, the world was very concerned about this. But apparently, 200 to 300 tons of water, after it initially happened, were then circulated through the still intact half of the reactor that exploded every hour. So 200 to 300 tons of water every hour. And this was up until they ceased it due to fear that it would flood the remaining reactors. But between the 2nd and 10th day following the explosion, 5,000 tons of boron, lead, sand, and clay were all dropped onto the burning core by helicopter, attempting to put it out so it could stop the release of the heavy radioactivity going on there in the air.
I guess it's not a bad idea. You know?
It isn't a bad idea.
We'll take a stab at it here, I guess.
I did see a thing that was they were telling us to go over these things and drop our loads, but they didn't want us hovering there. So the first people were just hovering there, dropping the stuff and leaving, and they were getting highly radiated just from the smoke, just from being above this fire. So then from then on, they were just told to kind of keep going and release as they went. But that just extended the whole process because no one could be accurate with that.
Yeah, that is hard to.
And so it saved a lot of lives, but it wasted a shit ton of time.
so it might have actually.
I don't know where the scale falls on that.
It might have actually killed more people because of that, but we don't know.
Yeah, it might have been. It might have done that. But so nothing like this had ever happened in history. So in turn, there's no protocol for dealing with it. The reactor exploding led to the brutal death of roughly 30 operators, about 31, I think. It goes between 30 and 31 from everything I've read.
Yeah,
it either says one or the other. But roughly 30 operators as well as firefighters reacting to the initial fires who didn't know it was radioactive. They just knew there was a fire, so they were just fighting it like they do, with little to no protection, so they all got fucked up. So 2 in the initial explosion, they died, right? We talked about them.
The lucky ones.
Yeah. And then the other ones, it was just due to acute radiation syndrome, which is basically when the body cooks itself from the inside, pretty much melting. It's the same principle as a microwave. Heat is just the vibration of cells. And when this radioactivity goes into your body, it basically vibrates the cells in your organs apart.
Yeah,
it's bad.
It causes severe damage. Anything from minor radiation burning to full-on skin loss, openings in the skin. I didn't know this. Apparently, it does things with the sinuses as well, and it can fuck up your mucus and destroy your throat and just burn it. Yeah, it destroys almost everything in your body really quickly. It kills almost all organic material, and you are nothing but organic material.
Yeah.
So
whether it's quick or long, it really hurts.
Oh yeah.
From what I've come across, apparently
there are videos that you can see online that are.
We just watched one right before we started recording.
Yeah, they're horrific.
It put me in a mood, man.
They are horrific. But, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and dude, there were a lot of cases of it. 134 cases of this syndrome were confirmed on site, and of those people, 28 died within weeks. And 24 more workers died in the subsequent years, though it's said that there's no proof that their death was directly caused by the accident. But come on.
We know.
Like, what do you mean? These people died within a year after this happened, and you're saying it wasn't because of that?
It's unrelated, but they did die.
Yeah.
Horrible deaths.
And a lot of people in the surrounding areas, like towns and stuff. I mean, there were pretty much every town, like Pripyat and Chernobyl, they were all evacuated by 11 the next morning. And they thought they were going to be gone for like 3 days, but they just never came back. But in any case, people in those surrounding areas didn't suffer from ARS, but they instead were soon after diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Many people got thyroid cancer.
Yeah, it's kind of like Vietnam, how like, yeah, maybe Agent Orange didn't kill you, but now you have cancer and it's 1980, you know?
It's like, well, it definitely didn't help.
No, it didn't. So, this, pretty much what we're dealing with here is a lot of mistakes were made. We could say that.
A lot of user error.
Mistakes were made, and people were obviously hurt in the process. Now, what does this mean for us today? Well, the land is still abandoned. Supposedly, there are people that live in the outskirts now that kind of can go in. It's not particularly poisonous to humans, but it's
some areas more than others.
Yeah, like if you when people say like, "Oh, I'm going to go visit Chernobyl," you're not going to where it happened because
it's a tourist destination, though.
Oh
like,
yeah, now
there's
a
lot of like there's tours that go through it. It's actually pretty crazy.
And it's we're getting there as far as radiation. We're getting there. It's getting better every day, believe it or not.
Did you know? Do you know like how many years they say it's going to take for like the land, like in and around Chernobyl, to not be radiated?
Yeah, it's something like 200,000 years or something.
I heard 20,000 years.
Okay, maybe
but
I
still
added a zero.
Like we go by 2,000 years. Like that's when we when we started ours. That has to happen 10 more times for that soil to make plants that aren't fucked up.
Yeah, so it is.
That's a long ass time.
It is a really sticky situation, to say the least. Now, I'm excited to tell you this because in part 2, which will be next Friday, we're going to be able to talk about some of the weirder stories, right? Now,
get into the nitty-grit.
Everything that has to deal with Chernobyl it's very shrouded in this weird, it's not a conspiracy by any means, but it's always going to draw that type of attention because of what happened and how big it was, you know?
Yeah.
So, not only are there things that have to deal with politics and the game of humanity, but there's also stories of mutated monster creatures and people. And there are actually people that lived through it that have told their stories. So we're gonna be really covering a lot of weird shit next week about that.
Yeah.
But we wanted to give you the background so you were more aware, because the idea of Chernobyl, it's very present in, I think, most humans nowadays.
Yeah.
Everybody's slightly familiar. Even if they don't know the story, it's like, oh yeah, that's that nuclear, like, tower or whatever.
And if you didn't know, HBO is good at educating people.
That is true.
Yeah. I haven't started watching it, but I think I'm going to watch it for next week's episode just to kind of...
Oh, that's good, yeah.
Because I know that there is some truth to some of the storylines in there. Like, I know there is one... there's one storyline in there apparently with like a woman who gave birth to a baby and she was fine, but the baby was like irradiated and died within like 4 hours or something like that. So there's like sad shit like that.
Yeah,
I don't know, man.
They're gonna make it,
but it's real. Like they have real shit that actually happened.
No,
so there's some crazy shit.
Definitely say check it out if you're looking for the more, I would say, personal side of it, the people that were involved and kind of how they handled it and what happened, and they really do a good job of just showing you that first-hand account of, I guess, what it would be like to be there or around it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I realized I didn't, like, do much of a good job explaining how the reactors necessarily worked. But,
I don't think we have to.
But exactly, that's what I'm getting at. Like, I feel like the more interesting part of it is the aftermath and like those people's stories, the effects, because they're still unfolding. Like the effects of this are still very prevalent.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And like I mean the U.S. and like all these different countries kind of band together to with it like very quickly after the initial disaster happened. They built this concrete sarcophagus to surround the entire like exploded reactor to kind of prevent more radiation from getting out. But in recent years, it's started to deteriorate so much that they're putting another sarcophagus on top of that one.
Yeah, we're sarcophagizing the sarcophagus.
Yeah, we're just going to keep building it out. This new one is like taller than the fucking Statue of Liberty. But apparently it's going to last another like 125 years. And every single documentary that I watched about this, there was a line that said, hopefully by then we could figure out what to do. It's like,
Pretty
Jesus
much.
Christ.
I mean,
Like,
that's really what it is. We're just buying ourselves time because we don't know what to do. And it's not saying that we're not intelligent. It's just that, I mean...
we're not intelligent enough.
To be completely honest, as a species of animal, we played with fire and we got burnt really bad. And we can't really put that fire out, so we're kind of just trying not to burn down the house, you know?
Pretty much, we got to keep it contained.
We're keeping it at bay until we can figure out how to get rid of it entirely.
Yeah.
Maybe that will never happen. We don't know, but I like to think it will. There's got to be someone smart.
It's like if your kid like put a lock on a door with a screen on it, and you can't get through, but he also built his own homemade bonfire in the middle of the fucking the living room.
Yeah.
And you just have to look. You're like, all right, what are we going to do about this?
We have to...
Maybe we cut our house in half. Maybe build this up with concrete so maybe it doesn't burn.
We have to
What do we
approach
do?
this with caution. That's all we know.
Yeah, we got to put some more graphite in there maybe.
But with all that being said, that is the episode for this week.
That's
Next
pretty much
week,
the episode.
we will be back with part 2, okay? Now, part 2 is where we're going to get, like we said, it's going to get real funky because we got
There's
some
going to be a shit ton of stuff.
intense... There's just wild stories on top of the already real radiation poisoned people that tell their stories of survival and
lots
death.
of things.
So...
And yeah, I mean, we didn't cover everything, but this would be like a 6-part episode
Oh, God.
series if we covered literally everything, and I wouldn't have fun with it. I don't
No.
know.
No,
I don't
this
know
was-
if you would. I don't think the listeners would.
This was perfect. I see the way I
That's
look at
what you
this,
need to know.
we're not scientists talking about Chernobyl. We're two people that are just telling you what happened.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
And that's, honestly, I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, that's the way I like it. It's very informal. You'll learn something, and now you have some more knowledge, you
There
know?
go.
But, yeah, we love you guys. We will be back on next Friday.
On next Friday.
That is
we
next week.
are starting a cult. Yeah, that's Random Jake. Follow us on all the shit.
Yeah.
We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we also have YouTube. We have YouTube Subscribe. There's also Patreon down below. You could click that, become a patron. It's great. You have extra episodes. We'll give you a t-shirt. We'll draw you pictures. So good. Spread the word of the cult, Gomex. Again, that's Random Jake, and we are starting a cult.
That we are. We love you guys all very dearly. Have yourselves a great week.
Yeah. Bananas.